Alright, welcome back. So when we last left our story, what we had was our AI, if we hit Shift F, we can see it, is able to patrol between the three different waypoints using kind of a simple ordered waypoint system. But we want to have it so that when when we get close enough to the character actually turns and chases us. So to make this happen, we need to do a couple things. Number one, I'm going to get rid of the main camera because I don't want to use that anymore. Instead, let's go ahead and bring in a first-person controller, so the first-person controller is actually in the scene. Now the second thing is I need to make sure that our character is aware of us, and then we're going to use the same things that we did in the Pesky Little Cousins project to build this out. So let's come back into the zombie script and we can start to build the settings that we need here. Now first, in order for this to work, we need to make sure that this script knows who the player is. So let's make a public game object that we're going to call player. Then we're going to build in some ranges like we did before. So let's make a public float that we're going to call chase range, another public float that we're going to call attack range, and let's call another float escape range, so that once we get out of escape range, he goes back to patrolling. Now we're going to create one more thing here that's going to be important. I'm going to create, I'll make it public for now, but we won't probably leave it there. I'm going to make a public Boolean called isPatrolling because we want to be able to flip this thing on or off so that it decides what it's going to do, whether or not it's patrolling or whether it's chasing us. Okay, so now let's go ahead and do some other things that will help us kind of see what that is. So let's build some gizmos. So I'm going to use onDraw gizmos, and let's make a gizmos.color. Let's make one that's color cyan, and this will be our getaway range. So we'll use gizmos.draw wireframe, wire mesh, wire sphere. Wire sphere that will be, so it's looking for the center and then the radius. So the center will be wherever this is, transform.position, and the radius will be escape range. All right, let's use the same method here. Let's copy this, paste that twice. Let's make one that is yellow that will indicate our chase range. And then let's make one that is red that we will have this be our attack range. Now right now these ranges don't do anything, but when this is finished compiling, we'll at least be able to see what those ranges are, and that becomes kind of an important thing. Okay, so if we look at here, then first of all it's going to be, let's close down the NavMesh editor, NavMesh. So first of all it needs to know who the player is, which will be us. Let's collect that. Let's make a chase range of, I don't know, maybe 10. Let's make an attack range of something much smaller, 3, maybe even 2, I don't know, 3. And let's make an escape range of 15 or 12. Okay, so that what will happen is when we're inside of the yellow, it'll chase us. When it gets to the attack range, it'll stop and actually attack us. And if we get out of here, we want it to go back to patrolling. So now we just need to start building in the mechanism that we did for Pesky Little Cousins. So first of all, I'm going to make sure that when the game starts, that the first thing we're doing is we needed to know that isPatrolling is true, that it is indeed patrolling. Now, what we'll need to do here now is start to do some of this work where it's checking to see if it's within the pathfinder, whether it's within the 0.5 of the waypoint. So I'm going to tell it to only do this if isPatrolling is true. If isPatrolling is true, then go ahead and check to see if you're within that certain amount and go ahead and place that there. Okay, so otherwise, if we're not patrolling, this is where we need to actually have it go and do some of this other work where it's chasing us. So let's create a new float here called distance to player. This should look familiar. Distance to player every frame is going to be measured as the vector3.distance that is between us, transform.position, and the player's transform.position. Then we can start to compare that. So if the distance to player is less than the chase range, then we want it to chase us. Now, since we're using the NavMesh agent, we'll use this a little bit different. First, I want to say is patrolling is false, because we don't want it to be chasing us or to be patrolling to different waypoints. Instead, we want to change it and say, hey, my agent, I want you to set your destination to not be the next waypoint, but instead be the player's position. Okay, so every frame it's redefining where that's supposed to be. So let's go ahead and save this and go take a look in Unity. So when I play the game, I want to watch for is patrolling to see if that's checking on and off, and then also we should be able to see what's happening here. So if I click play, then when the game begins, then we should see is patrolling gets turned on, which we did in the start, and we can see that indeed the character is kind of moving from patrol to patrol. But that if I, oops, let's come back over here, but if I start to walk up into that spot, then you see how he stopped patrolling and he's walking right towards me. And no matter how I turn, then he's going to stay looking towards me because he's chasing me. All right. So what we need to do is now allow a couple things. One is that we want him to actually start to chase us, to actually run after us. Now I've laid the groundwork for this before because we built in the My Animator. The My Animator is going to let us start to build in mechanisms that will be more complex. So I'm going to come in and look at my my zombie controller. Where is my zombie controller? My zombie controller right here. And right now we just have this idea of walking, that no matter what, the character's walking. But let's come in and look at some of the runs here and see if we like one. All right, so I like that run, but you can see how when he's running off to the side, which we don't want. Luckily, we know how to fix that. I'm going to go away, come back into run. I'm going to come in, do a couple things. Number one, make sure that it loops. Number two, I want to bake in its root transform rotation. I'm going to use the original and go ahead and click on apply there. What this should do now is that as I watch him run, you can see that he stays right along that line, that he's staying running forward. The nice thing about the way that this works, though, is that this new speed will actually be the speed that he uses as he runs. All right, the last thing I'm going to do is make sure that I rename this this clip as running. And I'll click on apply so that we've got that there. So just double check. Yep, that's all good. All right, so now out here in my animator, my controller, then I can drag this running script out into the scene. So what I've got to start to do is allow the walking script, the walking animation to transition into the running animation. Now the way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to right click on the walking, choose make transition, and drag down into the running. Now what we have to do is here is where we define how we get out of walking and into running. Now there's a bunch of cool stuff over here that you can see how it actually crossfades from walking into running. Does some kind of cool stuff. Because it's actually mixing the two animations together. But most of this stuff we're not going to have to worry about. There is one thing here though that you probably want to do, and that is turn off has exit time. If has exit time remains, then it has to finish the loop before it transitions. If you turn has exit time off, then it immediately shifts into the other, it immediately transfers from one to the other. Now what we want to do is I also want to tell it which condition actually allows us to move from there. Now if I click on the transition, the arrow, then you'll scroll down and you'll see this area that says conditions. Right now the list is empty. Now what we've got to do is start to turn on some booleans that are going to allow these things to happen. Now don't get confused over here. There's a thing called layers and a thing called parameters. I'm going to use parameters for now. And I'm going to start to make some parameters to do this. Now this is going to be a little goofy. There are more elegant ways to do this, but this is kind of an easy way to understand. I'm going to make a boolean that's called is running. And while we're at it, let's go ahead and make another boolean called is walking. And let's make one more boolean that I'm going to call is attacking. So that I can just kind of move between these. All right, so what I'm going to start doing is letting us move from one to the other by turning certain booleans on or off. So in this case, I want to move from walking to running when the condition is true that, I just click on the plus, is running is set to true. Now you can see those are all those booleans I just built, but the only one that I'm interested right now in is running is set to true. So I'm not going to worry about any of the other ones, but when is running is set to true, we're going to move from walking into running. Now all I've got to do is I've got to make sure that I can turn on the is running boolean, and I need to do that in my script. So let's come over and look at the script. It's here where we're in the chase range that he's actually giving chase that we want to start to change what that boolean is. So that boolean is actually a part of the animator. It's inside of the animator. So I can talk to it by just coming in and talking to my animator. And with my animator, I can come in and set a boolean on that boolean, and then the format is that you can either identify it by an integer ID and then the value, or you can do it by string. So I'm going to say is running, and I'm going to set that to be equal to true. Now, while I'm at it, I'm going to do just a little bit of cleanup here, and this is where our Boolean system is a little goofy, but it will help out. I'm going to make sure that the other ones are turned off, just so I'm kind of cleaning stuff up as I go. So I'm going to say is walking, of course, right now is false, and we're going to say is attacking is also going to be set to false. Now, like I said, there's better ways to do this, but it's kind of easy to kind of clean stuff up as you watch it here. Okay, so if I save and come back to Unity, once it's done compiling, I want you to see two things. I'm going to leave this open for a second so that you can see what's going on. When I click play, you'll see it move from entry right into walking. And the character, let's see, let me go ahead and select the character. The character is looping that walking. What will happen down here is that as I start to get close, then you see how it shifts to running, and right now he's not only chasing me, but since that boolean is set, he's shifted his animation into running. Now right now the only problem is we have no way of getting away. No matter how far we go, then he's always chasing us, and in fact he never actually kind of gets away to any other place. So we need to come in and kind of adjust that a little bit. So let's come back to our code. We're going to say, look, if we're less than the chase range, then go ahead and start chasing us. But then we're going to say, look, if we get too far away, then go ahead and go back to patrolling. So to do this, I'm going to say if the distance to player is greater than escape range, and we're not already is patrolling. So remember, the exclamation point in front of a boolean says is not. Okay, so if your distance is greater than the escape range and we're not already patrolling, then what I need you to do is go ahead and let's pick the next waypoint that's there, and then let's go ahead and get back to this stuff where what we'll do is we'll come back to here and we'll set is running will be set to false, is walking will be set to true, and is attacking will also be set to false. Now, what that will do is it turns those booleans on. The only problem that we have is in Unity we haven't given it any way to get out of running. Right now it goes from walking to running, but then there's no way for it to move out. So what I need to do is I'm going to right-click on running, make a new transition back to walking, and then I'm going to come into this transition, and what I'll do is say I want you to move from running to walking when is walking is true. Okay, so we move from walking to running. I'm clicking on that transition when is running is true, and we move from running to walking when is walking is true. Kind of the simplest of things. Okay, so if we've got all that compiled, just want to make sure. Yep, I saved that, so we're coming back. What should happen again, I'm going to look at it here so you can watch and see how these transitions work, but you still should be able to see what happens in the game. When I press play, by default, well, let's make sure that our character is selected so we can see it. Yep. So is patrolling is true. You can see him walking. He's walking along. So as I start to walk up here, then suddenly he's chasing me, right? You can see his patrolling is off up in our editor, but you can see that the running is playing there. But what will happen is that if I get far enough away, then I've gotten away and you see that he's transitioned back from running into walking. Now what he's also doing is he's also gone back to patrolling, so he's going to go back and find his other stuff. Now you will notice here though that I haven't set his patrolling back to true again, so I need to make sure that I come back and set this up here. Before you do that, let's make sure that is patrolling is actually marked as true. Okay, so that will make sure and take care of that. So the next thing that we need to do now is build it so that not only does he chase us, but when he gets close enough to us that he goes ahead and attacks us. Okay, so now we need to set it up so that when we get within attack range that it actually goes ahead and attacks us as well. So what I'm going to do is come in and tell it to only chase us when we're inside of chase range, but we're also, distance to player is also greater than attack range. Okay, so if it's we have to be inside of the chase range but greater than attack range for it to try and follow us. What we'll also want to do is go ahead and have it stop chasing and just stop to play the animation if it's within attack range. So we're going to say if distance to player is less than attack range, then what we want this to do is we'll say we'll make sure that is patrolling should already be false here, but let's just make sure that it's turned off. And then what we'll do is we'll use my agent and something called reset path. The way that reset path works is that it suddenly doesn't have a destination, so it just hangs out where it's at. And then I'm going to come in here and go ahead and set is running to false, is walking to false, and is attacking to true. Okay, so all of this should be built. Let's do less than or equal to so we don't end up with anything in between. So all of this is set up so that we're ready to start turning on the attack boolean. Now, just being able to turn on the attack boolean, though, does nothing for us because we don't have an attack in the scene. So let's go over to the assets and let's look at what some different attacks, what have we got? So a kick, another kick, how about this punching? All right, so I like that punch. So maybe I'll use that punch. So I'm going to come in and do a couple things. Number one, I'm going to make sure to loop it. Number two, I'm going to bake in the rotation during auto there. And number three, let's go ahead and rename this as attack. Okay, so with that set there, then now when I hit apply, all of that should be ready to roll. Now, if I grab that punch and drag it out here, then we can see that that animation is called attack. Now, in all cases, really, it's going to be running first because it's going to chase us first. So I'm only going to worry about this transition. But I'm going to right-click from running, make a transition out to attack. The condition that must be true in that case, first of all, let's turn off has exit time. Second of all, let's come in and set is attacking to true. And then when it's done attacking, let's go ahead and here, let's make another transition that we can go back to running if we need to. But here, I'm going to make sure that has exit time is still turned on, so it actually finishes its swipe as it's building. So we've got that built, so we've got a way out. Here from running into attack, we're not going to have an exit time, but on the way back from attack back into running, we're definitely going to make sure that has exit time is set, and the condition we want to have true is running ends up being set to true again. Okay, so let's come back out into the scene, take a look at what this does. If I click on play, what it will do now is that he should be patrolling to start with, patrol, patrol, patrol. As I run up, then he should, now he's kind of after me, right? He's running after me. When he gets close enough, then he stops and begins to attack. All right, and then if I get outside of there, then he should be chasing me. And if I get still further still, then eventually he should give up because I've gotten outside of the range, and he'll go back to patrolling where he goes back and finds where he's at. All right, so that is a complete AI system. Now, of course, we would need to build in the health system on us and a do damage system so that when he's attacking, that we go ahead and have him talk to our health system and fire the do damage. But that's all we're going to do for now. The next thing that we're going to work with is working with the same idea, but building in a mechanism that the AI can fire weapons. Okay.